Anybody here watch the news anymore? We get the news from other sources nowadays. There's folks younger than me do anyway. If you watch the news, or whether it's in the morning or in the evening, or even if you look at it online, there are three words that seem to dominate the news nowadays. It doesn't have anything to do with football. Doesn't have anything to do with guns and violence. I mean, that stuff's in there sometimes. And, really, it's dominated by three simple words that aren't even English. Hit that. Anybody ever heard that word yet? Quid Pro Quo. I have most everybody's attention in here for once. I'm so excited. Y'all think I'm going to talk about politics, and so everybody's blood is already starting to boil because everybody's got an opinion about this, and I do too. But this isn't the place for my opinion, so I'm not going to give you an opinion about what's going on. But I do want to talk about quid pro quo. Now somebody was asking, we don't have an outline in our bulletin. No, we don't have an outline in our bulletin. And as far as PowerPoint goes, that is the extent of your PowerPoint. That's all. Now that I think about it, as I've really thought about this, there are 5 words that I wish I had given you something to write down, but there are 5 words. You may want to find a place to write those in just a few moments. But I'm going to talk to you about quid pro quo. I asked, we've got those little Google home devices. It's kind of like Alexa. It's Google's version of Alexa. And a couple of weeks ago, I asked Google, I said, what is the meaning of quid pro quo? And it could not tell me. Isn't that interesting? It was kind of funny. It couldn't tell me. It really, it's Latin. It's not English, in case you didn't know. You probably don't go around just saying quid pro quo all day, unless you really like these talks. It just means this for that. You do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That's really what it means. This for that. And I want to talk to you about this for that. That's really going to be the extent of what I want to talk to you about this morning before we have the opportunity to take communion. This for that. I want you to turn in your Bibles. We've been going through 1 Peter. We finished that study last week, but I want you to turn back to 1 Peter. We're not going to talk about it in terms of suffering, although when he talks about Christ in 1 Peter, it really does have a great deal to do with the difficult situations that you and I face today. But I really, when I read through it, I thought, man, that is a fantastic passage. And in fact, as I was working through this later in the week, and the closer this day came, I was thinking, man, maybe I should do this like the Sunday before Christmas, or maybe this would be, what he has to say, what Peter has to say in 1 Peter chapter 3 is really a beautiful passage to talk about on Easter Sunday. But as I was studying, I was like, I don't want to wait. And so here we are. Maybe I'll preach this again on Easter Sunday. I don't really know. But quid pro quo is really the heart of what Peter is going to tell us. 1 Peter chapter 3, beginning in verse 18, and he gives some of the most beautiful words concerning the work of Jesus for you and for me. It also happens to be one of the most debated passages, certainly that Peter wrote. It's really one of the more debated passages in all of the New Testament. So that in some ways, some of what I'm going to say today could be highly debated by people who are a whole lot smarter than I am. But we'll talk about that when I get there. 1 Peter chapter 3, beginning in verse 18, simply says, "For Christ also died for sins once for all, the just for the unjust, so that he might bring us to God, having been put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the Spirit, in which also he went and made proclamation to the spirits now in prison, who once were disobedient, when the patience of God kept waiting in the days of Noah, during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. Corresponding to that, baptism now saves you, not the removal of dirt from the flesh, but an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who is at the right hand of God, having gone into heaven after angels and authorities and powers had been subjected to him." me and for you and for me. The first thing that he tells us, I mean, just right off the bat, he said, but Jesus died. And if you want to talk about suffering, and you want to talk about going through difficulties in life, you look at the life of Jesus. I mean, he walked it, he lived it, and he died. He died. And I think that's really the heart of everything. In fact, this passage right here really is the gospel in summary. It is the foundational truth for the entire New Testament, for the entire Bible, for the entire work of God in this earth, in your life and my life. First thing it says that he died. And then he goes on to describe that in a really a very succinct few phrases. He gives us a great description of that death. And it's these 5 words that I would have you write down somewhere. Maybe I should have provided you a place to write that. But you probably have some place that you could write down 5 words. I would encourage you to do that because, again, this really is a great summary of the death of Jesus. Just 5 words that I believe that he is representing here for us in the phrases that he used. The first thing it says, for Christ also died for sins. For sins. So the first word that I would have you write down would be the word sacrifice. Now when I say sacrifice, I mean it in all of its ugliness. We think about the death of Jesus and we romanticize it, we glorify it, and it should be glorified, what he has done for us. But when we think about it in terms of the New Testament, you've got to think about what they were coming out of. What they were like right in the middle of. They're the ones who took the step out of one phase of history and into another phase of history. You see, they lived in a time where there was the sacrificial system, and they would walk into church, and when they walked into church, there was a lot of blood, and it was everywhere. I mean, you have to imagine the stench and just the look of it, and the act of people going through and taking winged animals and taking little goats and on up to bulls and rams and all this, and they would kill these animals, and the blood would flow. And it was gruesome, and it was horrifying, and it was meant to be that way. It was meant to be disturbing because God looked at our sin and what our sin did to us and what it did to our relationship with him, and he said there must be a gruesome process so that they can understand what their sin has done, the extent to which their sin has killed them spiritually. And that was the sacrificial system. And you take that gruesomeness and you apply that to the cross. And that's the picture of Jesus, the Son of God, God's own Son, hanging up on the cross, his blood spilling as a sacrifice. First word would be sacrifice. But he doesn't just say that he died for sins. He also says, there in verse 18, he died for sins once for all. Second word I would have you write down would be the word final. Hebrews chapter 9 would be one passage you could look at. Chapter 7, verse 27, and chapter 9, verse 28. Both of those verses talk about how Jesus died once for all. That sacrificial system that had gone on for years and decades and centuries, and all the animals that had died, and all the blood that had been spilled, all comes to a head and comes to an end in Jesus. He was the final sacrifice, once for all. Yes, he died for sins once for all, the just. The just for the unjust. The just referring to himself. The word just means, and some of your translations may read it this way, the word just means righteous. The righteous for the unrighteous. He had no sin. There was no sin within him. He was perfect. He was tried. He was tempted. He passed every test. He was perfect. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 has something to say about that. But God gave him who knew no sin. He knew no sin. He had never sinned. God made him who knew no sin become sin on our behalf so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. God made him who knew no sin. You see, the third word that I would have you write down would be undeserved. undeserved. When you think about him up on the cross, he deserved none of what he went through. None of the torture. He didn't deserve any of the nails. He didn't deserve the thorn and crowns on his head. He didn't deserve the spear in his side. He deserved none of what he got. You and I? Yeah. I mean, we can see that. Jesus, undeserved. Fourth word I would have you write down would be substitute. Because it says the just for the unjust. In the place of the unjust. For the unrighteous. That's for you and for me. He was our substitute. Now, if you want to be like really theologically correct and you want to sound theologically smart and you know how to spell well, you can go ahead and say substitutionary. But for most of us, substitute would be just fine. He took our place where we should have been. He took our place. Again, God made him who knew no sin to become sin on our behalf for us. Substitute. And then the fifth word that we have here is that I would write, and you may bring up a different word, but that is effective. So that the end result would be so that in verse 18 he might bring us to God. It was effective. Of all the things that had gone on for years and years and years, none of it really worked. None of it accomplished what it was meant to accomplish. Only in Christ can we be brought to God. People came for years, and they would come to church week after week after week. And for them it was on Saturday, but they would come week after week after week. And they would give animal upon animal upon animal. They would bring their tithes into the storehouse, and they would come and they would pray their prayers, and they would do all those things. And none of it worked. And the thing is we live in a culture now, and that even within our own church, among people who go to church on a regular basis, if you ask them, well, how is it? Let's suppose you were standing before God right now, and he were to ask you, why should I let you into my heaven? What would you say? And most people are going to say, I went to church regularly. I mean, I was baptized, and I gave money, and I prayed, and I went to Sunday school. I taught Sunday school. I was a deacon. I was a preacher. And we're going to go through those 10 commandments, and we're going to say we did this, and we didn't do this, and we did this. And we're going to give our laundry list of things to God that show just how good we are. And when we come to that time, he's going to look at it the same way that he did everything that happened in the Old Testament. He's going to say, oh, that's great, but it's not good enough. You see, the thing about the 10 Commandments was it was never intended to do what you think it was meant to do. The 10 Commandments were never meant to save you. Ever. The 10 Commandments were there to show you how bad you needed saving. And what is becoming so common today is an utter lack of understanding of how sinful we are. We have spent so much of our time in the past few generations trying to build up kids, tell them how great they are and all that kind of stuff. Let me tell you something. Kids feel great about themselves, and they're going to feel so good as they get straight ahead. That's what's happening. Now, I don't think we all stand up and say, oh, kid, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, and all that kind of stuff. But we've spent so much time trying to tell everybody, oh, everything is just fine. You can't be that bad. Really? Look at the cross. Look at the cross. And you can see what your efforts to follow the 10 Commandments have done. They put the Son of God to spill his blood. The only thing that will get you to God is not anything you have ever accomplished. It's not your little laundry list. It's not all the things that you gave up. It's not all the ways that you have improved. And you went from step 3 up to step 7. So what? It's only Jesus. So that he could bring us to God. Because everything else that had been attempted in the past failed. just the death of Jesus that Peter talks about here, because if it was just the death, and that's what ended the whole thing, well, that would be a problem. Because the story still goes on, and here is the part, what I'm about to share with you now, is the part that is so highly debated, and I mean among interpreters. I'm talking about people who have studied, and they've made 1 Peter their life, and they know the languages, and they know theology, and they know people who believe the Bible are going to look at this passage very differently. In fact, I have in my own mind, I have changed as a result of this study. I have changed some of the things that I have not only believed in the past, but some things that I have taught in the past. So let's just see how this story continues to unfold, because he died up on that tree, but then something else happened. The story then goes on. Because it says there, then in verse 18, he was put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit. Bodily, he died. Spiritually, he lived on. Now what happened in the spirit? Because in verse 19, it says, it begins, in which. Now, I know that some translations are going to translate that differently, but I can just tell you that the best translation of that little phrase, of those few words, is in which. Talking about in the Spirit. Here's what he did. In which he also went and made proclamation to the spirits now in prison. Now, there are spirits, there are evil spirits that to this day, and all the way up until the great white throne judgment that we find in the book of Revelation, there are evil spirits that are kept in a prison. And what another word that you will hear that is used to describe this, used quite often in the book of Revelation, is called the abyss. And it is a prison hell. It is a place where these demonic forces are held in a prison. There are still demonic forces that are still alive and well and run free on this earth, and I don't doubt that one bit, because I believe the Bible teaches that. But there are some who, in the judgment of God, for whatever reason, he has chosen them to hold in this prison. In fact, if you want to turn over a couple of passages, you go past 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, you get to the book of Jude. Now, if you get to the book of Revelation, you've gone past Jude by one book. But if you'll look at the book of Jude, at the small letter of Jude, very short, it says there in Jude verse 6, there's only one chapter, so we don't even reference chapter, we just go straight to verse. Jude verse 6, it says this. It says, and angels who did not keep their own domain, but abandoned their proper abode. We'll talk about what that means in just a second. It says, he has kept in eternal bonds under darkness for the judgment of the great day. That's the judgment we find in the book of Revelation. He says, just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, since they in the same way as these indulged in gross immorality and went after strange flesh, are exhibited as an example in undergoing the punishment of eternal fire. Now notice, he is drawing a correlation between these demonic forces that are in prison, that are in this prison hell, the spiritual prison. He's making a correlation between them and the people who sinned at Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, the sin at Sodom and Gomorrah was homosexuality. It just was. It's a sin. I didn't make that up. That's in the Bible. I don't care how politically correct that is or whatever. It is sin. That's another story for another time. The Bible teaches that it's sin. And so that was the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. They abandoned their proper abode. They went after strange flesh. In other words, flesh that was like their own. Strange flesh. Now, the spirits then did something similar to that. They abandoned their proper abode. They went after strange flesh. Now, what's it talking about? We just saw in 1 Peter, which we're going to get back to, we saw in 1 Peter that it had to do with these spirits who had, in the days of Noah, done something similar that was sexual in nature, and they had abandoned what it was that God had designed for them. What was that? I want you to turn back, if you will, back to Genesis. Genesis chapter 6, because that's where we're leading up to the story of Noah. And there's the point to all this. We're getting there. Hang on. Genesis chapter 6, and we see the snowballing of evil upon the world. So that by the time we get to Noah, God has made his case that there is every good reason on the planet to flood the earth. And he begins in chapter 6 and verse 1. Now it came about, when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man, and so on and so forth. The key here is in verse 2. The sons of God. Sons of God are used in other places throughout the New Testament to refer to angels. These are angels who looked at human women and said, they look good. They're nice looking. I think I want to have relations with them. And they go into them and have children. Now somebody says, there's a strong argument. People make arguments about this all the time. And they say, well, they can't do that. They can't have relations in that way, physical relations in that way. How can that be true? Well, I don't know. I don't have an answer to all of that, but I can tell you this. I do know that in the story of Jacob had a wrestling match, a physical wrestling match with an angel. I do know that. I do know that angels showed up at Sodom and Gomorrah, and the men of Sodom and Gomorrah wanted to bring those angels out who had taken on bodily form. They wanted to bring those angels out and have sexual relations with them. That is in the Bible. That angels can oftentimes take on human form. Why could they not have done that in chapter 6 and verse 1? It makes all of these verses, all of these occurrences intermingled and making sense of one another. So that when we see it in that context, if we then turn back to 1 Peter chapter 3 again, it says that he went and made proclamation to the spirits who are now in the spiritual prison. And these are the ones who were disobedient when the presence of God kept waiting in the days of Noah. He went to them, and it says that he made proclamation. Now, proclamation was not the gospel. He didn't go to share the gospel, or the Greek word would have been euangelizo, evangelizing. He didn't go to evangelize them. The word for proclaiming here is caruso. It's a proclamation of victory. It's a proclamation that the king has come. It's the one who goes and says, I win. Now you can take that however you want to. You may not like that, but Jesus went to them and he said, you want to be down here. You trying to keep me down here. You think that you have won, but you just watch. And the next day, I'm going to be up there. I will have defeated you. I am the victor. Submit, surrender to me. I'm not yours. You are at mine. And there's a day coming that I have written down in my book. There's a day coming that I will judge you and I will cast you into eternal hellfire forever and ever and ever. But you need to see this. You need to watch. I will walk again. So, it says, as he's wrapping up this passage, he says at the end of verse 21, he talks about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That is his victory. And he's at the right hand of God right now, the hand of power and privilege. He says he has gone into heaven after angels, and the word angels there, that could be referring to the good angels, to the holy angels, or it could be referring to evil angels, either one, or possibly both. But when he says, and authorities and powers, those are two words that are used in the New Testament to refer to demonic angels. And what he has done is he has subjected them to himself. He has overcome. He is victorious. You see, he died. He died for you and for me, the just for the unjust. And he died and was buried, but he didn't stay there. He had the victory over death. He had victory over the entire spiritual world. And he walks again and he lives again and he's at the right hand of God the Father. Listen, you want to quit? That's your quid right there. He did that. He did that for you. You're talking about a favor for a favor. I'd like to see you try to top that. That's the quid of all quids. That's basically, what's the quo? You know, it's favor for a favor. What's the quid pro quo? What's my part in all this? What do I do? What do I get? What does he get in return? Can I just tell you, it's really not that hard because there ain't nothing you can do for it. I mean, there's just not. I mean, you can try to do all the right stuff. You can be nice to people and help the little lazy cross the street. You can do all that stuff. We have nothing to bring to the table when it comes to God. We have nothing that impresses Him. You should be extremely impressed by the quid, but you ain't got no quo to impress. Just none. So he says, here's what needs to happen. He talks about Noah coming through and his family, those 8 persons, they were brought safely through the water. This is their salvation. And the cool thing about that is, you think about water, isn't water good for you? Right? I mean, those of you who are nurses, you're in the medical field, you should be saying, oh yeah, water's good for you. Those of you who know nutrition and all that kind of stuff, you see the value of water and how good water is for you. Can I just tell you, water is so good for you because of, you know, almost all the mass it's in, how it cleans out your body, and all that kind of stuff. It's great for you. And you can die in 6 inches of water. Isn't it crazy how something so good for you can be so bad for you? Listen, the water that rained down, it was the thing that could have killed Noah. It was the thing that killed the entire world, all the living animals and people on land. It killed all of them, and yet it is the very thing that saved Noah and his family. And we look at Jesus, and we see how awful the cross is, and how gruesome that cross is, and yet it is also the most beautiful thing that has ever happened for you and for me. Through the water. Corresponding to that, he says, baptism saves you. Now, there are certain denominations that believe that you have to be baptized in order to be saved. They'll use this passage as one of those. And I remember having a long email, just back and forth with this guy who was out of the Church of Christ. For those of you who've been part of the Church of Christ denomination. And man, he just lighted up and talked about how you had to be baptized to be saved. I'd respond back, he'd respond back. It was, man, they were really defensive about that kind of thing. And they'll look at this passage, but if you read on, you see it's not the physical water. No. He says, not the removal of dirt from the flesh, but an appeal to God for a good conscience. You know what he wants back in return from you? You know what he wants? He simply wants you to call out to him. You just recognize what he's done. He died. And he rose to victory. And he just wants you to call out and acknowledge what he's done for you. I think about Romans chapter 10. Romans chapter 10 and verse 13. Whoever will call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. He just wants you to call out. What kind of winning scenario is that? The quid that he gave you and the quote that he asked. Just call unto me and I will save you. Just a few verses earlier than that, in Romans chapter 10 and verse 9, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. All that mess that you've been working on, it ain't going to do it. You just call out to him and ask him to save you. I'm going to ask if you will for just a moment. I don't do this often. You know I don't. I've been here for a long time. I feel like almost 18 months. And I've never done this before, but I just want you to bow your head and close your eyes right where you are. Just everybody bow your head and close your eyes. Because this is a big deal to me. I remember, still, everybody eyes closed. I'm just going to talk a little bit longer and we'll be out of here. I remember growing up in church and doing all the right stuff. And I remember the day that I realized describe some of you in here. It describes some people who are watching on their computer. You do good things, but you've never called upon the name of the Lord. Right where you are. Heads bowed, eyes closed. If you have never called upon the name of the Lord, and you would like to do so here this morning, would you just raise your hand? Everybody else is looking. If you would just raise your hand very quickly and don't put it back down. Anyone want to call upon the name of the Lord to be saved? You can do that. You can do it right where you are. You don't need me, although I'll be glad to help if you think you need me. All you have to do is call upon Him today. Lord, save me. Forgive me of my sin. Give me a good, clean conscience. And God save me. And He will save you. He promises that. And God cannot, not that He won't, He cannot lie. Call upon the name of the Lord right where you are. God, we thank you for dying on the cross for us. We thank you for the quid that you have promised to us, that you delivered for us. And we thank you for the opportunity to call upon you to be saved. And I pray for anyone in this room, good as they might be, that they will call upon you today and that they will be saved. Lord, we thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your love for us, demonstrated on the cross. Now have your own way as we respond to you. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to be standing out for you. For our time of invitation, we're going to have a quick invitation. It's not going to last long.